Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about System Center Virtual Machine Manager and Azure Site Recovery. So now let's take a look at using Site Recovery and our System Center Virtual Machine Manager and protecting a virtual machine with that. First thing we're going to need to do is go into our backup, our disaster recovery vault we created, and look under the site, getting started with the Site Recovery tab. And just like step one says, we have to prepare infrastructure. Notice we want to go from Azure, and in this case, yes, we have Hyper-V. You see some of the other options there. And then the third choice is we do have System Center Virtual Machine Manager. We're going to go ahead and hit yes there, and hit OK. Now we have to basically get our Virtual Machine Manager into and connected with Azure. So we can do that by adding the tab there, and as always, Microsoft's provided us with some steps in order to get that done. We're going to have to configure a proxy server. In our case, we don't have one, so we don't worry about that. Again, like other processes, download the installer and get the registration key. It's always good to take a look at those steps, make sure you understand all of them. So we're going to go in our Virtual Machine Manager and take a look at the cloud here. Take a look at the properties. That's one of our steps, is to prepare that cloud. Just bouncing through here so you can see some of the choices for the cloud setup I have. And then what we'll do is we'll take a look at creating the wizard to create a new one. Give it a name. We're going to protect all, make all hosts available. There's our hosts, network, and then we're not going to really use any load balancers in this example, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't have any templates. And for this, what we're doing today, we don't need to worry about the port classifications. But just to take a look at them there so you can see some of the different options. Storage, we're going to use remote storage. It could be local storage in your case, but in our case I have storage coming from a SAN. Capacity just shows us what our capacity is for this cloud. Capability, in this case it's a Hyper-V cloud. No replication groups. And then we could just hit finish. I'm not going to do that because we've already created the one we're going to use for this example. So now that we've got that configured, we need to go ahead and download the installer. Again, happens pretty quick. It's just our Azure Site Recovery provider. And we might as well go ahead and download the registration key, because we're going to need that. After we have those downloaded, we're going to go back to our Virtual Machine Manager and go ahead and install that Azure Site Recovery provider. It's going to stop the services for the Virtual Machine Manager temporarily so it can install the provider. Going to go ahead and take the defaults on this. Again, we've just basically configuring, installing the provider so that our Virtual Machine Manager can be registered in Azure Site Recovery Vault. And we've got that installed. We're going to go ahead and register that. Again, going to stop that service temporarily. It restarts it for you, so it's not something you really have to worry about. We're going to browse out and find that registration key. Again, we need to make sure it's within 2 days of us grabbing the key. That's a security measure Microsoft puts in place. So if you're greater than 2 days, go and grab the key again and create it. Again, we don't have a proxy. We're going to connect direct. we definitely want to sync our cloud metadata there, and we're going to go ahead and hit register. Now we've got that done, let's take a look at the additional steps. Again, the proxy we talked about. And this is basically steps for the Hyper-V host that's talking to your virtual machine manager. You want to make sure you complete those additional steps. There's our Hyper-V server. Go ahead and install our Azure Site Recovery Provider. Again, taking all the defaults here. Again, we're going to grab our registration key. And just like before, now our virtual machine manager cloud is registered to our Azure Site Recovery Vault, and our Hyper-V server is registered. So no matter what we want to do, we're good to go. Notice our cloud. Go and take a look at our host. Let's go ahead and move one of those hosts into our cloud. That way it'll be available to our Azure Site Recovery. Notice it's not associated. There's our cloud. We're going to associate it. Takes just a second. And there it shows up in our cloud, our RD SQL machine in this case. Take a look at the protection. And we're going to enable protection every 15 minutes. Then we go back into Azure. Notice that our virtual machine manager and our cloud is there now. We can move on. Just telling it, yep, we configured the host, which we just did and I showed you, so we're good there. Just go ahead and hit OK. Now we got to prepare the target piece. So it's our Azure sponsorship. We're going to use Resource Manager. Yep, we have storage created, and we have a virtual network good to go. And we're going to go ahead and grab our if we had one, in replication policy. If not, we can create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and associate one that I've already created. But again, if you want to create a new one, just to take a look at the settings, give it a name, where it's going to, how often we want it to replicate, how many replication points. But again, I've got one created, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab that. There it is. So now that we have our replication policy, it just takes a second there to associate it. There you go. It's successful. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And, Microsoft provides capacity planning tools. In this case, we're going to go ahead and say we have that done. If you don't, then go ahead and run through that and make sure you have correct bandwidth for the Azure Site Recovery. Now we're going to go ahead and actually start the replication. So step 1 is done. Now we're in step 2. Source is on premise. There's our virtual machine manager. There's our cloud we have in virtual machine manager. Here's our target, the Azure sponsorship, our resource group we created, and our storage account. Again, we're using Resource Manager. You can have the classic option if you want. Storage account, we can create a new one right from here, but we already have one created for this recovery. site recovery vault, so we're going to go ahead and just use the one we already have. And there's our machines, and looky there, there's our RD SQL that we added to our cloud on site. We're going to hit OK, tell it that's the one we want. Again, just some of the defaults here. We're going to make sure it knows it's a Windows-based machine. And if we had multiple disks, we can make some choices here. In this case, this machine just has one drive. We're going to hit OK. And there's our replication policy kicking in. And we're going to enable that replication. You can see that it's starting the enabling process. We'll go look at our replicated, under protected items or replicated items. There's the machine, and you can see that it's enabling the replication. It's getting started. We can drive down into that a little bit, see what's going on. Again, everything happens pretty quick. It's all successful. And just to take a look again at the machine, and you can see that we're protected in Azure. And the status, everything's going good, and it's enabling the replication and sync. Now we got our machine created and it's replicated. Let's go in and take a look at, back to our recovery service vault. We'll go in and take a look at this machine that we've had some replication going. I've let this go, and it's fully replicated at this point. We just go down into our protected items, hit our replicated items, and there it is, our RD SQL. We can tell it's protected. Look at some of the statistics here just so you can see what's going on. And then there's our test failover up at the top. Just again showing you some of the options on the screen so you get familiar with it. And then we're, like I said, we're going to go ahead and do this test failover. That's going to load up, and it looks like I haven't set up the target network yet. We're going to need a target network for this to fail over to, which isn't that big a deal, just something I missed in the initial setup, but we're going to go ahead and do that now. You can see we set that up under the site infrastructure network mapping, and we just mapped out our network that we want to use for the failover. It's going to create that network mapping for us. Then we're going to go back in and start the failover. Some general settings here we just want to double check. Again, we're going to have to pick this network. We've got two here, the one I just mapped and one unmapped, and it's going to remind us that for test failovers we might not want to use our mapped network, so we're going to go ahead and pick the unmapped network. You can do that if you want, but again, it's just their recommendation, so we'll just take their recommendation on this. But if it actually does fail over and you lose service on site, it's going to go to your mapped network that you mapped. Go ahead and hit OK there. Let it start the test failover. We'll go look at the jobs, site recovery jobs, and then we're just going to go in there and you can see that test failover is in progress. Jobs menus is great because you can always go back and look at, you know, what you've done, what completed correctly and not, that kind of thing. And you can see we're successful here. And the time right there, you can see it happens very quickly. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at that virtual machine. We can see that's created in Azure. There we can see it, our RD SQL test. Just take a look at that. And as you can see, like before, it looks, acts, has the same property settings as a virtual machine in Azure. Go back into our recovery services vault. And right now, you know, basically we've had a successful test. So what we're going to want to do is clean that up, and we'll go back into our replicated machine, and under the more side of that same menu, we can clean up the test failover. Again, we can add some notes. In this case, everything was good. Check the box, and we're going to go hit OK, and it's going to start the process of cleaning it up. And we'll go back in, and you can see that virtual machine was removed. And we're all done. Thank you for your time, and I hope you found this video informative.